Well, since it appears I'm gonna probably try to take one more day off from. Sorry, first it was a cold, and then it became became sciatica, um, which has to do with some really painful nerve stuff down my left leg. So I want to touch on a couple things so far in claiming Abraham, just to make sure we don't miss them. The chapter on Adam naming the animals is pretty straightforward, I know. But the again in Genesis, we read that the Lord Yahweh said that it was not good for the human to be alone, and so, according to the text, Yahweh dredged up some more creatures out of the earth. It's worth noting, by the way, that those creatures are identified as, get the right word here. I'm having a tough time. I'm back. So, man became a living. Oh, yes. So when Yahweh breathed into that lump of clay, it became a nephesh, a living thing. The same term is used for the creatures that Yahweh, the Lord, brings to Ha-Adam, the human, to see what the human would name them. Yahweh brings Nepheshim, that's the plural, but it's basically living things. Sometimes people try to make a great distinction between the human in Genesis 2 and the other animals. For example, that God breathed into the human form to make it alive. But how else do you think those other forms got alive? God breathed into them. They became living things, sharing in the breath of the life giver, God. So Yahweh apparently is looking for a partner for the human, and none is found among these things. But Yahweh brings them to the human to see what he would name them. I know this is in the book, to see what he would name them, and whatever he named them, that was their name. And that's significant. I remember about your age reading a book by an American Baptist theologian, Harvey Cox, who I think is still hanging on with us here on planet Earth, but he's getting up there. He's written a lot of great stuff. This was in a book with the rather perhaps unexpected title, The Secular City. We won't worry about the title right now, but Cox, I'm reading this book. I can remember plain as day in my dorm room as this would be my junior year. And Cox is pointing out that according to Genesis 2, God brings these creatures to the human to let the human name them. There's no cue cards. There's no, hey, call that one ostrich. It's the human task. And in fact, interestingly enough, Genesis says that God brought them to the human to see what the human would name them. So interesting, eh? I had you read something about that, didn't I? Yeah, so I don't perhaps need to overdo this. I forgot I also had you read an essay by me that I hope you read. But I think it's a significant shift in the Qur'an to God, Allah, the God, teaching the human the right names for everything. There's a right name. Only God knows the right name. And I had some fun with that in that chapter, and I trust that you read that chapter. And again, perhaps the most significant point to be made in all that is how the model that one gets for the holy book, a revelation in writing, where in the Qur'an, Muhammad is absolutely passive, just like Adam receiving the right names for everything. I know my hair's a mess. Rough day. So the Quran is entirely dictated by God. No human contribution of any kind is to be imagined. Whereas here in Genesis, God entrusts to the human the naming of things, and as we all know and as pointed out in the text, that names were not just arbitrary labels. Not saying they are for us, but much less for Middle Eastern people, where a name bequeathed meaning and destiny, and a rose by any other name wouldn't smell as sweet in this understanding of names. So that God entrusts that task to humans, does not give friendly suggestions or hold up cue cards. Further, is entrusted to see what the human will name them, as though to imply that God does not know what the human will name them until the human actually does it. All of that is obviously theologically fascinating. We'll move on real quickly to the Cain and Abel story, which is also really so significant, and most significant for the fact that the story of Cain and Abel, the thing that's by far the most important in this chapter is that the rabbis picked up that in Genesis, God says to Cain, the bloods of your brother are crying out to me. Not the blood of your brother, singular, but the bloods, plural. And having consulted with my friend and colleague and expert in all things Old Testament, Brad Kelly, Dr. Kelly has informed me that it's not untypical at all for the plural of blood to be utilized when the blood that's being talked about is spilled through violence. That the plural is quite typical. Well, I don't know if the rabbis didn't really realize that. I'm going to shut my door. Hold on. Oh, no, Coco, what are you doing? What are you doing? My dog's going crazy, and I'll bet you just anything she'll be back at my door scratching here in a couple minutes. Maybe not. I hope not. So she just needs to leave Daddy alone. Yes, you have this plural form, and already. What? What's your deal? Come. She's got freaked out by something. I'm wearing colorful stuff, aren't I? Coco, stop. Stop it. Sorry. There are many living things in my study. Some of them small, some of them perhaps larger than that would get Coco's attention. Don't want to freak anybody out, but anyhow. This bloods, the rabbis, she's really onto something. I'll keep with this. I'm sorry. The rabbis said, well, that's because it wasn't just Abel's blood, but all the blood of his potential offspring. So it's bloods. It's a lot of bloods crying out from the ground of, not only Abel's life, but those that he would have fathered and grandfathered and such. And in where this interpretation occurs, it goes on to say that, and so whoever kills a single individual, this is on page 109, it will be reckoned that he has killed the whole race. but to whomever preserves the life of a single individual, it is counted that he has preserved the whole race. This has turned out to be one of the most famous lines in rabbinic writing. Whoever saves a life saves the world. Whoever takes a life or destroys a life destroys the world. And interestingly, the Qur'an includes it. It's so interesting. Like, so in the story of Cain and Abel, not somewhere else, but in the story of Cain and Abel, we read that God basically, because God is the one who speaks throughout the Qur'an, for that reason, by the way, we should talk about this sometime soon, but the pronouns can shift very suddenly for God in the Qur'an. But perhaps the most surprising is the use of the first person plural, given how insistent the Muslim tradition is on the oneness of God. There's a term, in fact, I'll teach you right now, an Arabic term, tawhid, 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 which means oneness, and it like absolute oneness of God. So to have, for this reason, we decreed for the children of Israel that whoever kills a soul, then you get this little sort of proviso, not in retaliation for a soul or for corruption in the land. So there's some exceptions, is like one who has killed the whole of mankind. And whoever saves a life is like one who saves the lives of all mankind. It's just fascinating because I'm sure Muhammad, let's put it this way, speaking as a non-Muslim, I'm sure that Muhammad, as he heard the story of Cain and Abel, undoubtedly in oral form from Jews. Okay, you have to get out. Come here. Get out. Go on. Go in the house. Go. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to have this running commentary, comedic relief, if it's comedy at all. She'll still be coming back, and this time she's not coming in. So Muhammad hears the story of Cain and Abel, probably many times and perhaps in different versions, but always oral. And I'm wagering that the oral version that Muhammad learned included this fascinating sort of rabbinic commentary that the bloods meant, all of Abel's descendants. And so you get this saying. And I think that Muhammad had no reason not to think that it was in the biblical story. He doesn't have it written before him. And so he actually, if we put it this way, has God say, and so I decreed to the children of Israel this little lesson about taking one life is the destruction of the world. I'm just doing this in case you didn't follow the point. Maybe you all got it. So that while it's not in the Bible, Muhammad assumed that it was. I think he pretty much assumed that the oral traditions he picked up on from other Jews, well, not other Jews, from Jews, were like what their scripture said. But he was living in an oral culture, probably illiterate himself. So he learned these biblical stories often with the Jewish commentary. How would he know which is what? So this is one of the most dramatic spots, though, where he has God saying, that's why I told the children of Israel, thus and so, about taking a life. And it's interesting because, I had a Muslim commentator, who basically criticized the Jewish Bible for not having that in it. and then adding, of course, it is in the Talmud. Like, the implication would be that Jews at some point had taken that out of the original version. But then later, rabbis put it back in. And, the right response would be, that doesn't make any sense. But I don't, as I say at the end of the book, at the chapter, I don't do this to, like, sort of point out weaknesses in a Muslim approach to the Old Testament, although I think it is quite obvious here that Muhammad is assuming that the oral traditions he's heard are from the Bible. But I think that maybe I want to go to the end of it, the chapter. I know you've read it. This message from the Talmud and the Qur'an is one we desperately need to hear today. Life is not cheap, and to save a life is to save the world. On the other hand, to murder is to destroy the world, to erode God's good creation. A further grim implication of this message is that God does not intend to step in and stop us in our murdering, no matter its form or expression. God is more likely to ask us questions. The questions in this case were like, where's your brother? Why is your face so long? Those kinds of things. And then there's, listen, can't you hear your brother's blood crying out from the ground? These great, great questions. So God is more likely to ask us questions. And then this next part is sort of influenced by the 20th century Jewish philosopher Emanuel Levinas. A little bit of Buber, but mostly Levinas. So that God asks us questions, indeed perhaps to be the question, with a capital Q, that the faces of our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, even those who are strangers and enemies, present to us in this very moment. The question that the faces of our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, even strangers and enemies, present to us in this very moment. Whether we read it in the Talmud or the Qur'an, it has the ring of revelation. That's plenty for now, isn't it?